Fake justice horror! Donald Trump's voice thundered across the chamber, and the world froze. That insult wasn't just aimed at Jasmine Crockett. It echoed centuries of racism, sexism, and power abused in plain sight. One word, 3 seconds. And 8.5 million Americans watching live gasped as history repeated itself on national television. Trump, the sitting 47th president, had turned a hearing into a battleground. Jasmine Crockett, the so-called whore he mocked, stood unshaken, her eyes blazing with defiance. This wasn't politics anymore. It was a war of words sharp enough to cut through justice itself. And the first strike had already landed. The chamber had not even settled when Donald Trump slammed his palm onto the desk, the sound ricocheting like a gunshot through marble walls. Gasps fluttered across the room. Cameras zoomed. Reporters jolted upright. His face twisted into a smirk, then into a snarl. "Political puppet!" he barked, his voice booming through the microphone with venom. The insult was raw, primitive. It wasn't calculated like a politician's talking point. It was spit out like a weapon meant to humiliate. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Not a muscle betrayed fear. Her chin lifted, her eyes locked on Trump as though she had been waiting her entire life for this exact moment. The room throbbed with tension. Every second of silence stretched longer than the last until her voice cut through, steady as steel. "You call me a puppet?" she fired back, her tone razor sharp. "No, Mr. President. A puppet dangles without power. You're looking at the woman pulling your strings of corruption into the light." The chamber erupted. Gasps, murmurs, the rapid-fire clicking of cameras. Every corner buzzed like an electrified hive. Trump leaned forward, nostrils flaring. "You are nothing," he spat. "Nothing but a disgrace sitting in a chair you don't deserve." Jasmine didn't blink. She leaned closer to her own microphone, her voice low but scorching. "I earned this seat with truth, not lies. Unlike you, I don't hide behind money, men, or mobs." The words landed like punches. Each syllable sliced through the air, and the sound of typing from journalists grew frantic, as if the record of this clash was itself historic. C-SPAN's live broadcast ticker ticked upward, hundreds of thousands joining every minute. By the time Jasmine finished her sentence, 1.2 million people were glued to their screens. Trump slammed the desk again, louder. The microphones rattled. "This entire circus is a witch hunt. I am the President of the United States, and you—" Jasmine cut him off. Her voice rose, not in volume but in weight, carrying the authority of someone speaking for generations before her. "Are a man terrified of a woman unafraid to expose you?" The crowd inside the chamber could not contain themselves. Half shouted in outrage, half erupted in applause. Security guards shifted uneasily, eyes darting between the chaos and the stage where history was being forged in fire. Trump's complexion reddened, beads of sweat forming at his temple. He pointed across the table like an emperor sentencing an enemy. "You're playing with fire, Jasmine Crockett, and you will burn." Jasmine tilted her head, the faintest smile curling her lips. "Then let it burn," she said, "because the truth doesn't fear flames. It survives them." The line detonated. Every camera in the room swung toward her, capturing the glint of defiance in her eyes. For a fleeting second, even Trump seemed rattled, blinking as though he hadn't expected her to bite back with such ferocity. The hum of the audience swelled into chaos again. Lawmakers whispered to one another, some hiding smiles, others scowling in disbelief. Outside, protesters pressed against metal barricades, their chants rising louder as the words filtered through cell phones and live streams. Inside, the duel raged on. Trump hurled accusations: fraud, traitor, liar. Jasmine parried with precision, each counter laced with documentation, names, dates, evidence that pressed deeper into Trump's armor of bluster. Every exchange was another thunderclap, every word another strike in a storm that refused to calm. By minute 20, the live stream audience crossed 5.7 million. By minute 30, hashtags exploded across social media. Jasmine Crockett vs. Trump, non-is Truth vs. Power, non-Harrison stories. Trump, furious, shouted so hard that his microphone distorted. "You don't belong in this room!" And Jasmine, without hesitation, delivered the blow that would echo across news cycles. I belong here more than a president who treats truth like trash. Silence. Then an uproar, louder than before. Some lawmakers stood, fists clenched. Others slammed fists on desks. Reporters shouted over one another, desperate to capture the exact phrasing for their headlines. Through it all, Jasmine remained still. She didn't need to raise her voice further. The storm was already raging, and she had commanded it. Trump sat back, chest heaving, his smile gone. The predator's grin had been replaced by something else, the flicker of uncertainty. And in that flicker, the balance of power shifted. The first thunderclap had not only struck, it had shaken the foundation of the chamber itself. The battle lines were drawn, the storm unleashed, and the world was watching. This was only the beginning. And if you believe stories like this matter, stories where truth dares to stand against power, then don't miss the next strike. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where no silence survives. But silence was the last thing in that chamber. Because Donald J. Trump was far from finished. He lurched forward, his hand gripping the microphone as though it were the last lifeline to his throne. His voice thundered, deeper now, carrying not just anger but desperation wrapped in defiance. I am the legitimate president of the United States, he roared. This entire sham is nothing but the greatest witch hunt in American history. The words cracked across the room like a whip. He slammed his fist into the table again, rattling glasses of water, jolting stacks of paper into disarray. Members of Congress exchanged uneasy glances. Some nodded with grim approval, others shook their heads in disbelief, but no one dared to move. The atmosphere was suffocating, the oxygen sucked from the air by his rage. You think you can drag me down with lies? Trump bellowed. I built this country back from ruin. I stood against China, against the fake news, against the swamp, and you, his finger jabbed toward Jasmine Crockett. You're just another pawn in their pathetic game. The insult was scorching, aimed to diminish her, to cast her as irrelevant in the theater of his grand narrative. But Jasmine was not diminished. She leaned forward, her voice sharp as shattered glass. A pawn? She said. No, Mr. President. Pawns can only move one step at a time. I move with evidence. And tonight, every scandal you've buried will take a step closer to checkmate. The words hung heavy, like a storm cloud about to break. Trump sneered. Evidence? All lies, fabricated. Every charge, phony. Jasmine didn't flinch. She raised a folder, thick with documents, her hands steady under the weight of truth. Let's talk numbers, she said, her voice slicing through the room. $200 million in fraudulent valuations. 4 bankruptcies spun into success stories. 34 indictments tied to your name. And let's not forget, hush money payments, sealed with signatures you swore were never yours. Each number dropped like a hammer, countering Trump's roar with the cold authority of facts. Gasps rippled across the chamber. The camera zoomed in on her hand, trembling only slightly as she flipped page after page. Trump tried to interject, but she pressed harder. Tell me, Mr. President, how many Americans lost their homes while you padded your empire? How many small businesses collapsed while you boasted of being the savior of the working man? Her words were not just accusations. They were daggers aimed at the very mythology Trump had built around himself. He slammed the table once more, but his voice cracked this time. I made America great. No, Jasmine shot back instantly. You made yourself rich while America paid the price. The chamber ignited again. Applause, shouts, the thunder of voices colliding in chaos. Every camera light burned brighter. Every reporter's pen scribbled faster. Every second of this war feeding the world outside. The live stream surged. 9.3 million viewers. Then 10 million, climbing with every insult and counterstrike. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, feeds flooded with clips and quotes, hashtags spinning out of control. But inside, the battle only intensified. Trump leaned back, his face contorted with fury. Yet his voice regained its rhythm, like a boxer recovering mid-round. You don't scare me, Jasmine. You never will, he growled. I have the power of the people. I have millions who would die before letting you smear my legacy. Jasmine's eyes narrowed, a flash of fire behind her calm exterior. Then let them hear this, she said, voice rising now. filling the chamber with unshakable conviction. You are not the voice of the people. You are the echo of greed, and echoes fade. The words struck like lightning. The room fell into stunned silence for a heartbeat, as though the air itself had frozen to let the line resonate. Then came the explosion. Cheers, boos, shouts, the very walls vibrating under the storm of sound. Trump gripped the desk harder, his knuckles white, sweat trickling down the side of his face. But he refused to retreat. Instead, he leaned in, inches from the microphone, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You think you can curse me with your lies? No curse can touch me. I am the curse of power, and it will crush you. The words dripped with menace, reverberating through the chamber like the toll of a bell. For a moment, even Jasmine's expression shifted, just slightly, as though she could feel the weight of that threat. But only for a moment. Then she straightened, her lips parting in a cold, deliberate smile. Power without truth isn't a crown, Donald, she said. It's a chain, and every word you speak tonight only tightens it around your neck. The crowd erupted once more, a storm without end. And in that chaos, the war of words raged hotter, the curses of power colliding with the strikes of truth. Neither side willing to bend, neither side able to stop. The second act had begun, and the hammer had fallen. But Trump wasn't done swinging. This time he aimed lower. His voice slithered into something colder, crueler. You know what the real joke here is? He said, his lip curling into a sneer. Jasmine Crockett. Look at her. A nobody who clawed her way out of the gutter, pretending she belongs here. The words cut like a blade across the chamber. Murmurs rippled through the audience, sharp gasps breaking the tense silence. The camera zoomed in on Jasmine's face, waiting for her reaction, hungry for the crack of pain, the flicker of weakness. Trump pressed harder. Your daddy wasn't rich. You didn't build towers. You didn't command empires. You were born with nothing, and nothing is exactly what you'll return to when I'm done with you. The insult dripped with venom, personal and humiliating, crafted to reduce her to rubble before the eyes of millions. He leaned back in his chair, smirking, savoring the cruelty. For a brief moment, the chamber seemed to freeze. Every eye locked on Jasmine, as if time itself held its breath. But she did not crumble. She stood taller, her jaw tightened, her eyes steady, steel behind fire. Then she cut him off, her voice sharp, slicing through the static in the air. Mr. Trump, she said, each syllable deliberate, controlled, devastating. You are not worthy to sit in this chair. The words rang like a bell, clear and merciless. Gasps erupted again, louder this time, rising into a wave of disbelief and exhilaration. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards, capturing the quote that would set headlines ablaze. Trump's smirk faltered. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound was hollow, forced. So he lunged again, angrier, meaner. You think you're better than me? He snapped. You rode identity politics into this room. You hid behind race, behind gender, behind fake justice. Without that shield, you're nothing. Just another angry woman desperate for attention. The words dripped poison, crafted to belittle her, to strip her down before the watching world. The chamber erupted into chaos, half the audience horrified, half enthralled, all of them unable to look away. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She stepped closer to the microphone, her voice low but burning. You call me desperate? No, Mr. President. Desperation is a man clinging to lies, clawing at power he no longer deserves. The audience stirred, a collective intake of breath, sensing the tide turning. Jasmine pressed forward, her tone rising, steady and sure. You mock my roots? Good. Because my roots keep me grounded. Unlike you, I didn't inherit towers of gold. I inherited scars. I inherited struggle. And that's why I will never, ever be afraid of men like you. Her voice thundered now, filling every corner of the chamber, surging into millions of living rooms around the country. The crowd erupted, applause crashing against boos, chaos drowning out order. The hearing had become a gladiatorial arena, blood drawn not by swords but by words. Trump leaned forward, his face flushed red, veins pulsing in his neck. "You don't scare me," he roared. "You'll never scare me." Jasmine's answer came like a whip crack. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to expose you." The words landed with surgical precision, splitting through the roar of the chamber. Trump froze for a fraction of a second, caught off guard by the calm brutality of her strike. And then the explosion came, an eruption of voices, the chamber boiling over into pandemonium. The spectacle was unstoppable now, a wildfire burning across every screen, every platform, every whispered conversation. Blood was on the floor, not literal, but real enough. The kind of blood drawn from dignity, pride, and power. The kind of blood that leaves scars history will never forget. Yet even in that storm, both combatants stood firm, Trump clinging to the fortress of his fury, Jasmine standing as the unyielding blade of justice. The world leaned in closer, because if words could wound this deep, the next strike could very well destroy. And Jasmine Crockett had been waiting for this moment. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached under the desk, her hand emerging with a thick, sealed folder stamped in bold red. Classified. The room gasped as one. Reporters stood to their feet. Cameras zoomed so close the screen nearly shook with the grain of paper and the glint of metal clips. Jasmine's fingers moved with a surgeon's precision. She broke the seal. The sound of paper tearing echoed like a gunshot across the chamber. Trump stiffened, his smirk faltering for the first time. A flicker of unease darted across his face, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. But the cameras had already caught it, broadcasting that crack in his armor to millions watching live. Jasmine lifted the first page high, her voice slicing through the frenzy. "This," she declared, "is a record of a secret deal. A deal tying the President of the United States to shadow companies, offshore accounts, and a foreign billionaire whose name he swore he never knew." A tidal wave of murmurs surged across the chamber. Reporters scrambled, fingers clawing at keyboards, headlines already writing themselves in a frenzy of keystrokes. Trump shot forward, both hands gripping the table. "Lies," he barked. "Absolute lies. This is fake news on steroids. Fake news level 10. He forced a laugh, the sound sharp and hollow, like glass breaking under pressure. But no one was laughing with him. Jasmine lowered her gaze, her voice cold as steel. "You can laugh, Mr. Trump. You can scream. But these pages don't lie," she read aloud, her tone steady, every word a nail hammered into the coffin of his defense. "Account transfers, shell corporations, signatures, your signature." Gasps erupted louder than before. Some in the chamber covered their mouths. Others exchanged horrified glances. The cameras caught everything, feeding the nation's appetite for spectacle and scandal. Trump shook his head violently, his hair whipping under the fluorescent lights. "This is doctored, forged. They're trying to set me up." But Jasmine pressed on, relentless. "You call it fake. Then explain why the same billionaire appeared at your private golf club 3 times in 1 month. Explain the photographs. Yes, the ones taken on the very green where you claim no meetings ever occurred." She flipped another page, sliding a photo across the desk for the world to see. A smiling Trump, drink in hand, standing shoulder to shoulder with the billionaire in question. The chamber erupted. Chaos turned nuclear. The gavel pounded for order, but order was already dead. Trump grabbed the microphone, shouting over the roar. "Photoshop, you people are blind. It's a smear campaign. Every picture, every paper, it's all manufactured garbage." But the redness in his face betrayed him. The tremor in his hand betrayed him. And Jasmine was merciless. "You want America to believe this is fake? Fine. Then swear under oath that you've never taken a dime from this man. Swear it now. Live before the entire nation." Trump froze. His mouth opened, then closed. His chest heaved, air rasping in and out as though the walls were closing in. The silence was louder than any scream, a silence so thick the chamber itself seemed to tilt, waiting for the answer he couldn't give. Finally, he exploded again. "This whole thing, it's a witch hunt. They did it to Nixon. They did it to Reagan. They tried to do it to me before, and they'll keep doing it. But I will never bow. Do you hear me? Never!" His words rang out, furious but hollow, bouncing off the chamber's walls without conviction, because the documents lay open, undeniable, heavy as the truth itself, and Jasmine stood tall, folder in hand, unshaken. She leaned closer to the microphone, her voice low and lethal. "You've built your empire on lies, Mr. President, but tonight, lies are no longer enough." The chamber detonated, applause, outrage, shouts of disbelief, colliding like thunderclaps in a summer storm. America's living rooms roared with it, millions of eyes glued to the screen, millions of breaths held in awe, fury, or fear. And in that chaos, the battle had shifted. Trump still had his roar, but Jasmine had drawn blood. The secret weapon had been revealed, and the war of words would never be the same again, because once a secret is unleashed, it cannot be caged. And if you believe secrets like these must be dragged into the light, then remember, subscribe to Harrison Stories, where every truth finds its voice and no silence survives. But inside that chamber, silence was dead. Trump shot to his feet, the chair scraping back with a violent screech. His face was crimson, his body trembling, sweat glistening under the harsh lights. With one savage motion, he slammed the microphone forward, the metallic clang rattling through every speaker, every television set, every phone screen. "You think you can corner me?" he screamed, his voice cracking like thunder. "This entire committee is a joke, a lynch mob, a pack of traitors who hate America." The microphone quivered under his fist. Spittle flew from his lips as he jabbed a finger around the chamber, condemning everyone in sight. "You, fake patriots! You, parasites! You all want me in chains because you fear me!" The audience gasped. Some lawmakers pushed back from their chairs, others froze in horror. Every camera lens drank it in, every syllable blasting into millions of homes. Trump's rage was no longer controlled. It was feral. It was the roar of a man fighting not for politics, but for survival. And yet Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing, her voice emerging calm and precise, every word a blade. "Mr. Trump, fear is not what keeps you awake at night. It's guilt." The chamber erupted in murmurs, the sentence slamming into the walls with the weight of truth. Trump's jaw clenched, but she cut across him again, refusing to give him oxygen. "You accuse this committee of being traitors, but the only betrayal here is the betrayal of the American people, by the very man sworn to serve them." Trump tried to laugh, but it came out jagged, bitter. "You think you can wound me with words? I've been attacked by every crooked journalist, every corrupt prosecutor, every fake activist in this country. I survived them all. I'll survive you." Jasmine's reply was instantaneous, a strike honed sharper than steel. "Survive? You are already bleeding, Mr. President, and no amount of shouting can hide the stain." The room convulsed, gasps, applause, jeers clashing like swords. The gavel pounded for order, but order was lost in the storm. Trump slammed the microphone again, its stand wobbling dangerously. "You're nothing, you hear me? Nothing. Without me, this country collapses." Jasmine's gaze locked on him, steady and merciless. Her voice dropped lower, colder. "No, Mr. Trump, without truth, this country collapses, and truth has never been your companion." The words cut deeper than any insult. The chamber seemed to lean toward her, as though the walls themselves craved more. Trump raged, pacing like a cornered animal, his voice cracking into a scream. "You call yourself a fighter? You're weak, a puppet. You think you can play mind games with me?" Jasmine rose from her chair, the movement slow, deliberate, commanding. Her presence filled the space without volume, without theatrics. When she spoke, it was not a shout, but a dagger. "This is not politics anymore, Donald. This is your conscience on trial, and every word you scream only proves how loud your demons are." The chamber fell into a strange silence, not empty, but charged. The silence of a battlefield just before the next volley. Trump's chest heaved, his hands shaking, his face twisted in fury. But beneath it all, the cameras caught the flicker again, that fleeting shadow of doubt, that fracture in the armor. Jasmine saw it. She pressed harder. "You call this a witch hunt, but you are no victim of magic. You are the architect of your own ruin. Her voice sharpened further, slicing through him with surgical cruelty. You built an empire of glass, Donald, and tonight it shatters. Not because of us, but because you chose to live in lies. The audience gasped again, a collective exhale that seemed to shake the walls. Trump froze, fists balled tight, his eyes wild. But he had no words, only screams, raw and guttural, pounding against the air like fists against a locked door. The battle had shifted. This was no longer about policies or scandals. It was a war of psyches, of shadows, of inner collapse dragged naked into the spotlight. And in that war, Jasmine's blade of calm precision was sharper than any roar Trump could muster. The chamber crackled with the electricity of a duel that had gone beyond politics, a duel that had entered the battlefield of the mind, and America couldn't look away. But Jasmine wasn't finished. Not yet. She leaned forward, her hands steady on the desk, her voice a calm thunder that cut through the storm. This committee has not come empty-handed. We have more than documents, more than speculation. We have a voice, a witness. The chamber froze. The words carried weight like a blade pressed against a throat. Trump's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowing, a flicker of panic flashing, before rage drowned it out. "You're bluffing," he barked. "You've got nothing. Another hoax, another smear campaign." But Jasmine didn't blink. She let the silence stretch, let the cameras linger on her face, let the air tighten until every breath in the room felt borrowed. Then with deliberate gravity, she uttered two words that cracked the room wide open. "Bring him!" Gasps spread like fire. Every head turned toward the door at the back of the chamber. And there he was. A man stepping forward, shoulders tense, face pale but resolute. A man who had once been close to Trump, close enough to see the shadows behind the curtains. The cameras zoomed in, commentators scrambled, the audience held its breath, because this wasn't just any witness. This was someone who had been inside the machine. Trump froze. For the briefest of seconds, his mouth parted, his bravado slipping like a mask about to fall. Then he exploded. "No, no, this is a setup!" he roared, slamming his fist onto the table. "You can't do this! I won't allow it!" But his protest only fed the fire. The witness moved closer, guarded by officials, his eyes never leaving Trump's. And Jasmine's gaze burned hotter, her voice sharper than ever. "You said we had nothing. You said we feared you. But the truth has a face, Donald. And tonight that face is here." The audience erupted, some cheering, others shouting, the chamber unraveling into chaos. The gavel pounded in vain. Trump turned wild, his finger jabbing in every direction. "He's a liar, a traitor. You're all in on this." His voice cracked, rising higher, breaking into a frantic shriek. "You can't trust him. You can't trust her. This is war. War." He was unraveling, and the world was watching. Every scream, every frantic gesture, every vein bulging at his temple was broadcast live to millions. Jasmine, meanwhile, didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm was louder than his fury. She stood, her eyes locked on Trump, her words precise, lethal. "For years you've hidden behind walls of power, but power cannot shield you from truth. And when truth walks into the room, even kings must kneel." The witness's voice trembled at first, but steadied as he spoke. Names, dates, deals whispered in private halls. Moments only an insider could know. Each revelation struck like hammer blows, echoing through the chamber, leaving Trump no place to run. And with every word, Jasmine's fire grew brighter. Trump staggered, shaking his head violently, clutching the microphone as though it were a lifeline. "Fake! All of it fake!" he bellowed. But his voice was cracking, collapsing under the weight of disbelief. The mask was slipping, and everyone could see it. Jasmine leaned forward again, her voice slicing through his rage. "This is not fake news. This is sworn testimony. And for the first time, you are cornered, not by enemies, but by the truth you've tried to bury." Her words were surgical, each one cutting deeper. The chamber thundered with noise, but her tone remained steady, controlled, inevitable. Trump pointed, his arms shaking violently. "You'll regret this. Every one of you will pay. I'll destroy you all." But his threats rang hollow, the roar of a man choking on his own fear. The witness's testimony poured on, relentless, like floodwaters breaking a dam. And for the first time, Trump looked smaller. Not the towering figure of defiance, not the unbreakable titan, but a man pressed against the wall, the fire in his eyes flickering with desperation. Jasmine's gaze pierced him, unwavering. "Do you feel it, Donald? The walls closing in? The air tightening around you? That's not us. That's your conscience, clawing its way to the surface." The audience hung on every word, caught in the gravity of the moment. Even the cameras seemed to zoom closer, as if the lens itself refused to miss the unraveling. Trump pounded the desk again, veins straining, voice hoarse from screaming. But the sound no longer commanded fear. It sounded desperate. It sounded like defeat. Jasmine delivered the final strike, her tone like fire over ice. "You can scream all you want. You can deny, deflect, destroy every microphone in this chamber. But the truth stands here, breathing, unshakable, undeniable. And tonight, for the first time, you are the one on trial." The room detonated, gasps, shouts, flashes of cameras exploding in a frenzy. America leaned in closer than ever before. For the first time in this war of words, Donald Trump had been driven to the edge, and Jasmine Crockett was the one holding the match. But edges are dangerous places, and Trump was never a man who went quietly. He lurched forward, gripping the microphone with both hands as though trying to bend it into submission. The metal rattled, the speakers howled with feedback, and then his voice thundered through the chamber. "This is a disgrace, a total setup. This is what they do in dictatorships. Witch hunts, lies, fake witnesses." The words weren't sentences, they were grenades, each one hurled into the air with raw fury, each one designed to shatter, to overwhelm, to drown everything else in noise. The chamber erupted into chaos. Reporters shouted, papers flew, cameras spun desperately to catch the firestorm. One producer could be heard screaming into a headset, "We're live! We're live! Don't cut the feed!" Millions of screens across the world lit up. Phones buzzed. Televisions blared. The largest audience yet was locked in, their breath held as the confrontation descended into something feral. Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned toward her mic, her voice sharp enough to slice through the noise. "You think yelling makes you innocent? You think volume equals truth? That's the tactic of cowards." The words detonated. Trump's head whipped toward her, his face crimson, his finger stabbing the air like a weapon. "Coward!" he bellowed, veins bulging at his temples. "I built this country's strength. I stood up when people like you wanted to tear it down. You're nothing but a puppet for the haters. Pathetic, weak, a total loser." The microphone quivered under his grip, feedback squealing again. But Jasmine's rebuttal came fast, like bullets from a rifle. "You built nothing but debt and disgrace. You left trails of lies so deep the ground still stinks of them. The only strength you know is bullying, and tonight it's collapsing in front of the world." The clash hit like thunder rolling through the chamber. Every insult was a lightning strike, every retort a countershock. It was no longer politics. It was primal, raw, a storm unleashed. Trump slammed his hand on the desk, rattling the wood. "You wouldn't last one day in my shoes. Not one. You don't know the pressure, the attacks, the betrayals. I fought for this country while you—" Jasmine cut him off, mid-roar, her voice ablade. "You fought for yourself, and everyone knows it." Gasps rippled through the audience. The kind of gasp that spreads like electricity when someone finally says the unspoken truth aloud. Trump's mouth hung open, his words choking for a beat before erupting into fresh fire. "You don't deserve to sit there to talk to me like this. You're an embarrassment." "And you," Jasmine snapped, leaning so close her words practically scorched across the desk, "are a fraud draped in a flag." The chamber exploded. Shouts, cheers, boos, all colliding at once. Microphones crackled as reporters yelled over each other. "Keep rolling," someone screamed from the press box. "This is history in real time." Trump roared over the cacophony. "I will not be humiliated by a nobody. I am the president." "You were," Jasmine fired back. "And history is already writing the footnote under your name." The silence that followed wasn't real silence. It was the sharp intake of air from thousands in the chamber, millions across the globe. The kind of silence that feels like the sky before the second thunderclap. Trump's fist shook. His words tumbled out in staccato bursts, guttural, desperate. Lies, treachery. You're tearing the country apart. You're the disgrace, not me. But his voice no longer carried dominance. It carried panic. It carried the sound of a man thrashing against the tide. Jasmine's tone, by contrast, was cold steel. America is watching, and no matter how loud you scream, no matter how many insults you hurl, the truth doesn't bow to tantrums. The audience roared, half in outrage, half in awe. The tension was unbearable, every second stretching like a wire ready to snap. Trump leaned forward, spittle flying, his whole body trembling with rage. This isn't over. I'll bury you, Crockett. You'll regret the day you ever opened your mouth against me. Jasmine's eyes burned with fire. Her reply was quiet, but it hit like a hammer. I'd rather regret speaking truth than live forever as a coward afraid of it. The chamber convulsed, a storm within four walls, and the live stream carried it all unfiltered to the world. Every household, every phone, every pair of eyes glued to the spectacle, knowing this wasn't just another argument. This was a duel, a second thunderclap crashing louder than the first, rattling the bones of power itself. And outside, across America, people whispered to one another, voices trembling with disbelief. This is unlike anything we've ever seen. The battle of words had crossed into legend, and neither combatant was willing to let the storm end here. Jasmine's eyes sharpened, her voice dropping lower, colder, deadlier. Enough of the noise. It was time for precision. She tapped the stack of papers before her, quietly, deliberately. The cameras zoomed in, catching the gleam of official seals, the faint black lines of financial tables. Mr. Trump, she began, her tone steady but laced with venom. You keep shouting about witch hunts, but the truth doesn't need to hunt. It leaves footprints, and yours are all over these. She lifted a single sheet and raised it high. On the big screens behind her, the numbers magnified, filling the chamber. A hush swept through the room. Reporters craned forward. Lawmakers froze. These, Jasmine continued, her voice slicing through the silence, are records of shell companies tied directly to your empire. Companies laundering money through foreign accounts. Millions disappearing into shadows. Millions, Mr. Trump. Care to explain? The air detonated in gas. Papers rustled. A camera flash went off like lightning. Trump's face blanched for a flicker of a second. The mask of rage cracked, just enough for the world to glimpse the fear beneath. But then, he laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed strangely in the chamber. Fake. Totally fake, he sneered, his voice trembling at the edges. This is recycled garbage. Witch hunt lies. Everyone knows it. Everyone. The laugh was too thin, too forced, and the eyes betrayed him. For the first time, Donald Trump's gaze darted, not at Jasmine, not at the committee, but at the cameras, as if pleading silently with the audience at home to believe him, to hold the line. Jasmine didn't give him time to breathe. You call it fake? Then let's read from your own signatures. She flipped the page, her voice ringing like a hammer on steel. Loans disguised as consulting fees, properties transferred at values so low they insult arithmetic, and dates that match perfectly with campaign donations funneled through your so-called allies. She slammed the paper down. The sound cracked like a gunshot. This isn't fake news, Mr. Trump. This is fraud. Your fraud. The chamber erupted, half in outrage, half in stunned silence. Reporters shouted over one another, desperate to catch the words for their headlines. The gavel pounded like a frantic heartbeat. Trump tried to retake ground, voice rising, desperate. This is nothing. Everyone does business. You can twist numbers all day. Doesn't mean a thing. It's normal, perfectly normal. His laugh cracked again. And this time, the cameras caught it. The twitch at the corner of his mouth, the quiver in his hands. It wasn't defiance, it was panic. Jasmine pressed harder, her words relentless. Normal? Millions hidden offshore? Normal? Donors rewarded with government contracts? Normal? Tell America, tell them right now, How many of your decisions were bought and paid for? Trump stumbled, stammering, voice dropping into a hoarse growl. You're twisting everything. You're making it up. But the mask was falling fast. His words no longer rang with power. They trembled, cracked, betrayed him. The audience could feel it. The shift, the momentum tilting like a great ship, leaning toward one side. For the first time, the crowd's eyes weren't just fixed on the spectacle of the fight. They were judging, measuring, and siding with her. Jasmine saw it. She knew it. And she struck with merciless precision. You stand here screaming about witch hunts, about persecution, about patriotism. But the truth is simple, Donald. The louder you yell, the more the world sees the cracks, the more they see the fraud, the coward behind the crown. The chamber shook with reaction. Some gasped, some cheered, but all of them leaned forward, sensing the tide turning in real time. Trump tried once more to muster his fury, pounding his fist against the table. I am not a coward. I built everything. They're jealous of me, of my success, of my power. But the words came out ragged, strangled, almost pleading. And Jasmine, calm as stone, delivered the line that tore the mask completely away. Power doesn't tremble like this. Fear does. The silence afterward was deafening. It wasn't the silence of order. It was the silence of realization. Shared, collective, unstoppable. For the first time since the storm began, Donald Trump stood exposed. His rage no longer shielded him. His laughter no longer fooled anyone. The mask had fallen, and the world had seen what lay beneath. Trump's face twisted, raw fury etched into every line. His voice erupted, hoarse and cracked, no longer thunder, but a desperate scream tearing at the air. Traitor! He bellowed, his finger jabbing across the chamber like a dagger aimed at Jasmine. She's the traitor, not me. She hates this country. She hates our flag. She hates everything we stand for. The words ricocheted through the chamber, wild and untamed, each accusation more frenzied than the last. She's working for enemies. She's destroying America from the inside. This woman isn't justice. She's poison. She's the real danger. The chamber buzzed with chaos, some gasping, others muttering in disbelief. The camera zoomed close, catching the sweat pouring down Trump's temples, the manic gleam in his eyes. He slammed his palm against the desk, rattling the microphone, nearly toppling it. I'm the patriot here. I gave everything for this country, everything. And this fraud dares to stand there and accuse me? But Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't shout. She didn't even raise her hand. Instead, she leaned closer to the mic, her lips curling into the faintest, coldest smile. Her voice came out steady, even like iron wrapped in silk. Mr. Trump, if defending truth makes me a traitor, then I wear the name with honor. The silence that followed was sharp, slicing through the room. Then she continued, her words deliberate, each one hammered into place like nails driven into wood. You accuse me of betrayal, yet every document, every witness, every number points to your betrayal of the very people you swore to protect. You shout patriotism while lining your pockets. You scream loyalty while selling influence. You call me traitor, but every word you spit only betrays your own fear. Trump shook his head violently, his voice cracking into rage. Lies! All lies. You're twisting everything, manipulating. It's what traitors do. You're the liar here. You're the one tearing us apart. But his words collided with hers and fell apart. Because she was no longer just answering him, she was dismantling him. Tell me, Mr. Trump. Jasmine's voice cut sharp across his rant. Was it loyalty when you funneled contracts to your allies? Was it patriotism when you mocked soldiers in their graves? Was it justice when you used your office to shield your empire? Each question landed like a hammer blow. Each one left him sputtering, struggling to find footing. Trump's hands shook as he slammed the table again. I never did that. Never. It's fake. All fake. Fake documents. Fake witnesses. This is treason against the president. Against America. But even as he screamed, his words tangled around themselves, collapsing into contradictions. Moments earlier, he had shouted that the records were meaningless. Now he swore they were fabricated. The logic collapsed, folding in on itself under the weight of desperation. And Jasmine saw it. She pressed harder, her tone now sharpened to a blade's edge. First, you say the records are harmless. Then you claim they don't exist. Now you scream they're fake. Which is it, Mr. Trump? Because the only thing consistent in your answers is your fear of the truth. The audience gasped, the sound like a wave crashing over the chamber. Trump's mouth opened, but no words came. Only a strangled roar of frustration. "You twist my words," he shrieked, pounding the desk again. "You're the criminal here. You're the fraud. You're—" But his voice broke. It cracked mid-scream, collapsing into a ragged cough, his breath heaving, his fury trembling out of control. And Jasmine struck the final blow of this round, her voice calm, merciless. "America sees the difference tonight. One of us answers with facts. The other hides behind screams." The words landed heavy, undeniable. The chamber erupted. Applause, shouts, chaos spiraling out of control. But beneath it all, the current had shifted. On the screens of millions, Trump no longer looked invincible. He looked cornered, desperate, a man clawing at the walls of his own unraveling. Jasmine, by contrast, stood steady, a fighter whose calm struck harder than any scream. And as the noise surged through the chamber, it became clear to all. This was no longer a battle of equals. It was the downfall of one and the rise of another. A desperate man against a warrior who would not bend. But the storm had not passed. It had only sharpened. Trump leaned forward, his chest heaving, each breath tearing through his lungs like fire. His face flushed crimson, his eyes bloodshot and gleaming with fury. The microphone rattled as he gripped the edge of the desk with trembling hands, knuckles white, veins bulging. "You think you've beaten me," he rasped, voice raw, shredded from hours of screaming. "You think this circus makes you a hero? You're nothing, nothing. I carried this nation on my back while you tore it down. I am the only one who matters. Without me, America dies." The words tore from him like claws scraping against stone, jagged, desperate, dangerous. Spittle flew with every shout, dripping onto the wood below, as if his rage itself was devouring him alive. His supporters in the gallery clapped and howled, but their numbers were drowned out by the low, resonant murmur of disbelief swelling through the rest of the chamber. For every scream he gave, a new crack appeared in the myth of his invincibility. Across from him, Jasmine did not move. Her hands rested calmly on the desk, her posture upright and still, like a statue carved from unyielding rock. Her eyes fixed on him, unwavering, and when she spoke, her voice cut through the roar like steel through cloth. "Mr. Trump, strength is not measured by how loud you scream. It's measured by how well you stand when the storm tries to break you." The chamber hushed, the weight of her words pulling the oxygen from the room. She leaned slightly closer, each syllable deliberate, controlled, merciless. "And tonight, the storm is not breaking me. It's breaking you." Trump lurched forward, slamming his fist onto the table, the sound like a gunshot. The microphone squealed with feedback, his voice exploding through it like a firestorm. "No, you don't get to say that. You don't get to decide what strength is. I am strength. I am power. You're a fraud, a liar. You will never break me." The last words cracked, jagged as glass. His throat gave way, the sound half roar, half choke. And Jasmine struck, her tone still cool, her words sharp as razors slicing the air. "You claim to be power, but real power does not beg. It does not scream. It does not tremble." She let the silence hang. The cameras caught his shaking hands, the sweat dripping down his jawline, the twitch in his left eye as the strain of rage consumed him. Then she delivered the strike that carved into the core of the spectacle. "Real power stands. And right now, Mr. Trump, only one of us is still standing." The chamber erupted, gasps, shouts, applause, an uproar shaking the walls. The sound battered against Trump like a tidal wave. He staggered back slightly, eyes darting across the crowd, searching for the loyalty that once came so easily, now fractured and uncertain. He slammed the desk again, trying to rally, his words spilling out, hoarse and unsteady. You don't understand. None of you understand. They're coming for me because they're coming for you. She's just their weapon. She doesn't care about this country. She's a tool, a puppet. And you'll all see when it's too late. His arms flailed, his gestures unhinged, his voice climbing into hysteria. But the more he shouted, the more his words betrayed him. Chaotic, tangled, consumed by paranoia. And Jasmine knew it. She pounced, her voice still precise, still calm, but now carrying the weight of inevitability. You say I'm their weapon, but what you fail to see is this. The only weapon that has destroyed you tonight is your own voice, your own rage, your own fear. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze never breaking, her expression carved from stone. And then softly but deadly, she added, "You've broken yourself. I didn't have to lift a finger." The words landed like a final nail driven into a coffin. The chamber froze in collective awe, the gravity of the moment suffocating. Trump's lips trembled, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. His chest heaved, his breath shallow, his face a canvas of rage, humiliation, and disbelief. He had thrown everything at her, screams, accusations, fury, denial, and she had stood, silent at times, sharp when needed, unbreakable. The clash of wills had reached its peak, both sides pushed to the absolute edge of human endurance, and the verdict was clear. One was gasping, shaking, collapsing beneath the weight of his own desperation. The other sat steady, composed, her resolve unshaken, her voice still cutting through the air like a blade that refused to dull. It was not just a debate anymore. It was a trial of human will. And in that trial, everyone watching, whether in the chamber or across millions of screens, saw the truth. One man had broken, one warrior had not. And the storm, once unleashed, had chosen its victor. But Jasmine was not finished, not yet. She had waited step by step for the moment when her words would no longer be enough. When steel needed to be replaced by fire, and now the fire burned in her hands. Slowly, deliberately, she reached beneath her stack of folders. The rustle of paper in the hushed chamber was deafening. Cameras zoomed in, lenses hungry as the world leaned closer still. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine began, her voice calm, almost surgical. "For every accusation Mr. Trump has hurled, for every denial he has thrown, I present to you something he cannot shout away." She laid the folder flat on the desk. With one sharp motion, she pulled a document free and raised it high. Pages stamped with official seals, signatures inked in bold strokes, contracts traced with numbers and dates that could not be erased. Her voice sharpened, slicing through the silence. "This," she held the page for all to see, "is the deal. The secret transaction that tied Mr. Trump directly to an offshore network designed to hide millions from the American people. Every cent concealed, every lie recorded, signed by his own hand. Gas ripped through the chamber like thunder. Papers shuffled, chairs scraped against the floor, reporters shouted over one another. Phones lit up in a frenzy, streams exploding with fire emojis, with one word racing across the screen. Busted. Trump froze. For a man built on motion, on bombast, on attack, on chaos, his stillness was the loudest sound of all. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. But no words came. His eyes flared red, veins webbing across his temples. His hands trembled, fingers twitching as though trying to grab the document from across the room, as though he could rip the truth apart with his bare fists. "You!" His voice cracked, dry, guttural. "You forged this. You made this up. This is another hoax, another scam, another witch hunt." But the scream had lost its edge. It broke halfway, his throat giving way under the strain, his body betraying the weight of disbelief crushing him from the inside out. Jasmine didn't flinch. She slid the second page forward. "Then explain this." It was an email, not a whisper, not a rumor. His own name in the metadata, his words spelled out in cold, undeniable print. A deal, a demand, a confession without realizing it. She read it aloud, her voice unhurried, steady as a blade being sharpened. "Make sure it doesn't trace back. No one can know. Keep my name off. Every syllable was a hammer strike, each pause a nail driving deeper. By the time she lowered the page, the room was no longer divided. It was united in shock. Reporters screamed. Phones rang. The sound of typing became a storm. And the audience, those who had doubted, those who had defended, those who had feared, rose like a wave of realization. This was not rumor, not speculation, not politics. This was proof, final, fatal, absolute. Trump staggered back, his chair screeching against the floor as he shoved it away. His hand reached for the desk, but it slipped, his palms slick with sweat. The man who had once boomed with invincibility now looked cornered, frail, a lion with its claws ripped out in front of the world. His voice erupted again, hoarse, broken. "No, you don't understand. They made me do it. This isn't real. It's a trick. They're all in on it, all of them." But the words collided with the evidence. And evidence does not bend to volume. It does not shatter under denial. The contrast was stark, his screams wild, unhinged, while Jasmine's composure stood like iron. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't need to. "Mr. Trump," she said softly, almost with pity, "this is not a witch hunt. This is accountability. And tonight, America finally sees it." The explosion of noise that followed was deafening. Applause thundered like cannons, drowning his protests. The chamber shook with the force of history, the cameras capturing a moment destined for headlines carved into the bones of the nation. Trump's face drained of color, then flushed again, his rage battling his fear. But his words failed him. Every syllable he threw was swallowed by the proof lying on the desk, illuminated under the relentless lights, projected across the screens around the globe. There was no escape, no spin, no rally strong enough to bury this. For the first time, Donald Trump looked not like a titan under siege, but a man defeated. Jasmine lowered the final page, her hand steady, her voice resolute. "This," she said, "is the knockout." And the chamber erupted one last time, this time not in debate, not in division, but in a singular, undeniable truth. The fight was over. Silence followed the storm, the kind of silence not born of absence, but of awe. Every eye fixed on the victor, every camera trembling as it tried to capture the impossible weight of the moment. Jasmine Crockett rose slowly from her seat. She did not rush, did not gloat. Her posture was straight, her chin lifted, her presence radiating a strength that felt older than the walls of the chamber itself. "Justice," she said, her voice carrying across the hall, "does not bow, justice does not tire, and justice will never fall." The words struck like cathedral bells, resonating through the bones of the room, echoing out into every living room, every phone, every streaming device tuned to the broadcast. Viewers gasped, cried, shouted, clapped, prayed, an entire nation trembling under the force of a single declaration. Across from her, Donald Trump sat collapsed into his chair. His shoulders sagged, his face blotched with sweat and fury, his eyes unfocused as though staring into a void only he could see. For the man who had once claimed to be invincible, indestructible, untouchable, the image was brutal, a fallen figure, crushed not by armies or coups, but by truth unveiled under light too harsh to hide. The contrast was biblical, a warrior of justice standing tall while the self-crowned emperor crumbled into dust. The villain undone not by a blade, but by his own lies, turned back on him like a mirror that refused to shatter. The sound swelled. First the applause, then the chants, then the rhythm of voices rising from the chamber itself. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" The word roared as if the walls themselves were alive, vibrating with the weight of history being written. Outside, the streets caught fire with noise. Not the fire of chaos, but of catharsis. Car horns blared, crowds poured from sidewalks, strangers embraced, tears streaked across faces lit by phone screens, replaying the moment on loop. The words had already gone viral. Justice does not fall. Newsrooms scrambled, anchors speaking faster than their voices could keep up. Headlines flashed in real time. Crockett destroys Trump with final evidence. Justice declared in historic showdown. The fall of a president live. The world outside America watched with equal intensity. From London to Lagos, from Sydney to Seoul, screens lit up with the image of Jasmine standing like a sentinel of truth, while Trump sat broken beside her. The global commentary was unanimous. This was not just a hearing, it was history. And in the center of it all, Jasmine remained composed. She did not smile in triumph. She did not taunt. Her silence was victory enough, for she knew the battle had never been about humiliating a man. It was about proving that even when power corrupts, even when money shields, even when fear silences, truth can still break through. Trump lifted his head weakly, lips parting, as though he might try one final scream, one final denial. But no sound came. His voice, the weapon he had wielded for decades, was gone. The world did not wait for him anymore. Jasmine turned to the committee, to the cameras, to the millions watching. This one, she declared, is what it means when we say no one is above the law. Not a king, not a president, no one. The room thundered again, but this time it wasn't chaos. It was affirmation, the roar of a nation reclaiming its breath, its spine, its belief that the scales of justice could still tilt toward what was right. For a fleeting second, the world felt different, cleaner, sharper, as though the fog had been pierced and the horizon of tomorrow looked a little less dark. Trump lowered his gaze, his hands trembling in his lap. The image of a man dethroned, not by coups, not by conspiracies, but by the relentless persistence of one voice unwilling to yield. And Jasmine Crockett, the warrior of justice, stood at the center of it all, not just victorious, but eternal, her words etched into the marrow of history. The fight had ended, the villain had fallen, and the truth had roared louder than lies ever could. The chamber doors opened, reporters surged forward. The chants swelled louder than the hammer of any gavel. It was not just the end of a hearing. It was the ringing of a bell that tolled for every injustice silenced, for every truth buried, for every voice once ignored. The bell of history, the bell of justice, and it gushed like thunder across the world. Jasmine lifted her head, eyes steady, her voice clear enough to pierce the noise one last time. Justice does not fall, not today, not ever. And as the cameras captured the moment, the image burned itself into memory, a warrior rising from battle, victorious not for herself, but for the world that still believed in the impossible. The hearing was over, but the roar of justice had only just begun. In the end, this was never just about one man's lies or one woman's courage. It was about the eternal weight of truth and the quiet reminder that justice may stumble, but it never breaks. We are shown that power without conscience will always collapse under its own weight, while even a single voice, if steadfast, can become a storm strong enough to shake the world. And so the lesson lingers. Be unyielding in honesty, fearless in the face of cruelty, and willing to fight for what is right. For justice only roars when we dare to speak. If this showdown made your heart race, don't just scroll past. Pause, reflect, share it. Send it to someone who still believes lies can be louder than truth. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where courage is never silenced and villains are always unmasked. Hit the bell, because the next battle won't be quieter. It will be sharper, and it just might change the way you see justice. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real abuses of power and the relentless fight to expose them. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental or symbolic, meant to spark reflection and debate. Thank you for watching. Justice isn't fragile. It roars when we demand it. This is Harrison Stories.